Chapter 6328. Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate and beautiful face could not hide the surprise in her heart. Her eyes were as bright as the stars, and her clear voice was filled with excitement. Wife, you've succeeded? Beichen's lips curled into a warm smile. Wuxuang's face was also filled with surprise. But more than that, it was a sense of relief. He had long guessed that Hongzhuang would not give up on this opportunity. Therefore, after they had succeeded, he had been worried about this problem. In fact, when he heard Hongzhuang mention his name, he felt relieved. This meant that even if she had not succeeded, Hongzhuang had retreated safely. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. It seems that we've both succeeded. This is what it means to be a couple singing together. Beichen's lips curled into a devilish smile. Even he was amazed by this amazing tacit understanding between them. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, but did not refute. She also felt that this was too much of a coincidence. Therefore, just as Shangguan Yingying and the others were wondering who had come out, they saw two figures appear in front of the door together. Bailey Hongzhuang and Beichen walked side by side. The man was handsome, and the woman was beautiful. It was as if they were a match made in heaven. You've both come out together? Xiren quickened his pace and quickly greeted them. Previously, I only saw a flash of golden light. What's going on? Not only Xiren, but everyone else was also puzzled. If both of them had succeeded, there should have been two flashes of golden light. However, only one of them had appeared. Could it be that only one of them had succeeded? Looking at everyone's puzzled expression, Bailey Hongzhuang only smiled faintly and did not speak. Beichen asked, "Can't we both succeed at the same time? Don't joke around. How could there be such a coincidence?" Xiren rolled his eyes, his face full of disbelief. You must have waited for the other party to succeed before coming out together, right? Emperor Xiaofeng asked. Then which one of you succeeded? Everyone was very curious about this question. Although they hoped that both of them would succeed, failure was also expected. After all, so many people had failed. If one of them could succeed, it would already be very impressive. We both succeeded, Beichen said frankly. Beichen, it's meaningless for you to make such a joke at a time like this. Xiren frowned. They were really curious about this result. I'm telling the truth. Beichen's face was calm, but he no longer paid any attention to Xiren. His meaning was clear. It was up to him to believe it or not. Xiren and the others were confused. They could only look at Bailey Hongzhuang for help. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang faintly smiled. Beichen is telling the truth. What's the truth? You both succeeded? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. The smile on her face made her even more beautiful. That's right. But why did we only see one flash of golden light? This doesn't make sense. Emperor Xiaofeng frowned. Even he felt that this situation did not make sense. It really is such a coincidence. When I found out, I was also very surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang faintly smiled. Let alone everyone else's reaction. Even she felt that it was impossible. Chapter 6329. I finally understand now. The two of you are really a match made in heaven. Not only did you pass such a difficult checkpoint together, you even passed the checkpoint at the same time. There is no one else who can show off their love like this. Xiren shook his head. Although he already knew that these two guys were beasts, it seemed that he still underestimated the extent of their beastliness. It was obviously a life and death experience. Everyone was worried about their situation, but the result made everyone really speechless. Following Xiren's words, Shangguan Yingying and the others also nodded. This was really what they were thinking. This dog food, they ate it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Beichen smiled faintly and didn't say anything. They were very clear about the tacit understanding between them, although this result also made them feel very surprised. But thinking about it carefully, it wasn't impossible. By the way, how long have we been in the Bitter Sea Abyss? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. She was very curious about this question. Bailey Yunyan replied. We're not too sure how long we've been in there, but it should be more than a year. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. The situation wasn't too different from what she had guessed. During this period of time, we stayed outside all day worrying. Now we can finally rest assured. Di Xiaofeng sighed faintly. But this bitter sea is really boring. There's not even a fish swimming in it. We're now done with the level. You can also end these boring days. Di Beichen smiled faintly. We've been out for so long. It's time for us to go back. Everyone nodded. For ordinary cultivators, more than a year of experience wasn't long. But judging from their daily experience, this time wasn't short. We can finally go back. Looking at this scenery all day is really boring. Xiren stretched lazily. His posture was lazy and casual. By the way, what's the inheritance of the bitter sea abyss? Di Xiaofeng's eyes lit up. Is this the power that the nine-tailed inferno fox mentioned? That's right, this is it. Di Beichen nodded. He was a little more curious about the nine-tailed inferno fox. So many people did not know the specific situation of the bitter sea abyss, but the nine-tailed inferno fox knew so much. It was indeed surprising. The inheritance of the bitter sea abyss is the heaven's eye, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. As soon as these words came out, a trace of surprise appeared in everyone's eyes. Heaven's eye, just hearing this name makes me feel that it's very impressive. Heaven's eye, to see through all illusions. This name is really good. Xiren smiled brightly. If we follow you in the future, won't we be able to eat and drink well? Looking at Xiren's smug face, Shangguan Yingying rolled her eyes. Get away from me. It's embarrassing. With this power, you won't fall into the illusions set up by other experts in the future. This is really a very powerful power. I'm sure it will be very useful in the future. Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with envy. Almost everyone wanted to have this ability. However, the difficulty of the level was too high. Otherwise, he would also want to go in and try. Chapter 63:30. Following Bailey Yinch's words, everyone had a look of agreement on their faces. How terrifying was the bitter seas level. Since they were able to pass, it meant that their hearts had passed the test. The tests set by other powerhouses were only a test of one aspect, but they had all passed the test, so what was there to worry about? Beichen, you've obtained the inheritance of the three abyss, so has the power merged? Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows slightly. The heaven's eye was very powerful, but he was more curious about what kind of power the inheritance of the three abyss would be after merging. So far, only one cultivator had managed to do so. Moreover, that cultivator was someone from many years ago. Thus, it was likely that no one in the entire upper realm knew about this. It's merged. Di Beichen's lips curled up slightly. Even he was deeply shocked by the power after the merging. What kind of power is that? Xiren asked curiously. Di Beichen looked at the curious crowd. This power is different from the power we usually come into contact with. When I have the chance, I'll show it to you and you'll understand. Looking at your appearance, I'm afraid that your strength is truly incredible. Xiren's eyes were filled with joy. He knew Di Beichen very well. This guy had always had high standards. However, his expression alone was enough to prove that he was satisfied. The inheritance of each abyss is very amazing. With the three combined, the power will definitely surpass any one of them. Linger's voice was cold, and there was a faint joy on her calm face. To her, nothing else was important. The most important thing was that everyone was safe, so she could be at ease. Looking at the bitter sea's abyss that was shackled, the shock in everyone's hearts did not dissipate. Such a mysterious and powerful place contained a very terrifying power in this world. In their opinion, the bitter sea's abyss itself was not a sin. It only existed to temper everyone's hearts, and it did not deliberately turn them into crazy demons. However, it was too difficult to break through the barrier in one's heart. Most of the cultivators failed at this point. From the beginning to the end, the abyss of misery had only existed for the sake of its existence. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed deeply to the bitter sea abyss. Compared to the other two abyss, she admired the bitter sea abyss more. Even though it was shackled, it was still as immovable as a mountain. It was like a Buddha, exuding a calming power. Let's go. Before they left, everyone glanced once more at the sea of misery, and they seemed to want to forever remember its vast and magnificent appearance in their hearts. In the future, they might never come to this place again. But just seeing the bitter sea abyss made them feel that this trip was worth it. After leaving the sea of misery, the group walked on the shore. Now the coast no longer had the previous 4 seasons of rain and snow. Instead, it had become an extremely ordinary coast. Everyone was slightly stunned when they saw this scene. There was even a trace of an illusion in their minds. Could it be that everything we experienced before was not real? However, that feeling was just too real. Chapter 63:31. If everything before was an illusion, then the abyss of misery is really terrifying. Di Xiaofeng looked at the unfamiliar environment in front of him in disbelief. He had never seen such a realistic environment. Even though they had this thought at the beginning, they still erased it in the end. This was because they couldn't find any flaws in the illusion. Perhaps it was because all the weather was unreasonable, so they could no longer distinguish between the reasonable and the unreasonable among the countless unreasonable weather. Even after entering the abyss of the bitter sea, they had never realized that all of this was fake. Since the abyss of misery can see through all fabrications, then the illusion it creates will naturally be even more terrifying. Bewitching was not as surprised as the others. In fact, after passing all the levels in the abyss of misery, he already understood everything. Only by understanding everything could he create such a realistic and impeccable illusion. The power after the fusion of the 3 great powers is somewhat similar to the illusion we encountered before. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. In the past, when she faced the sudden change in weather, she was also helpless and anxious. Now that she understood everything, she was more in awe. Even if their cultivation was getting stronger, they still had to be in awe in the face of these powerful powers. That was because these powers had completely exceeded their understanding. As the voice of Bailey Hongzhuang fell, everyone present was startled, and then there was a deep shock and joy in their eyes. Is that true? After the fusion of the 3 powers, there's actually such a shocking power? If you really master this power, it'll be a great killing weapon. Illusionary realms were something that every cultivator yearned for and feared. They often encountered illusions, and the various powers in these illusions would cause them to fall into a predicament. It was not easy to break out of the illusion. If they also had the means to create illusions, it meant that they had another powerful means. If they directly created an illusion when facing an opponent, it would take a lot of effort for the opponent to break out of the illusion. Taking advantage of this time, they could easily get rid of a difficult opponent. The powers we have are very similar. If I'm not wrong, everything we encountered before was not an illusion. Her pitch-black phoenix eyes flickered with wisdom, and her delicate jade-like face bloomed with confidence. Hongzhuang, what do you mean? Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows in confusion. It's not an illusion. It's an existence that's one level higher than an illusion, a boundary. A boundary. Everyone chanted this strange yet familiar word in unison. The illusory realm is an illusory world created by a cultivator. It is a type of illusory technique. Everything is fake. A boundary is a small world condensed by the cultivator's own power. Every blade of grass and every tree there is created by the cultivator. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly expressed her opinion. When she was in an illusion, she would always find a way to break through it by looking at some details. Chapter 63:32. The barrier was different. Many cultivators might not be able to tell when they enter it. In addition, there's another difference. Because the barrier is built by the cultivator at will, he has the ability to control everything in the barrier. In other words, he can create the most favorable environment for himself, and then deal with his opponent in this environment. Bewitching's voice slowly sounded, and his deep eyes revealed a trace of thought. As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression changed. If they didn't understand how big the difference between the two was before, then now after the two's introduction, they knew how terrifying the barrier was. If that's the case, then the power of the barrier is really too strong. Bailey Union's face was filled with emotion, although she didn't understand it very well. Just from the information she learned, it was simply a great weapon. With this ability, there would be no problem in fighting beyond one's level. Illusions are often set up long ago, It requires the cultivator to walk into the trap set up by themselves. However, the barrier doesn't need to be set up at all because it doesn't need to be induced. It's a means to deal with the cultivator. Am I right? Mo Yunjue pondered for a moment before speaking his opinion. He didn't understand this term at first. After thinking carefully, he understood the difference between the two. From this point of view, the difference between the two wasn't big at all. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. That's right, that's it. Bewitching nodded. Bai Lianche and the others also understood. This is really shocking. The inheritance of the three great abyss is really extraordinary. This kind of power is really enviable. At this moment, everyone also understood what the nine-tailed inferno fox said before. The reason why the cultivator could be so outstanding was that this ability must have helped him a lot. Beichen, Big Brother will have to rely on you in the future. Di Xiaofeng put a hand on Di Beichen's shoulder. I used to think that after you came to the upper realm, as your brother, I would have to take good care of you. Now it seems that I will have to rely on you to protect me in the future. In the past, he had always thought that he was the chosen one. But now that he thought about it, Beichen and Hong Zhuang's abilities were really too strong. When facing other cultivators from the upper realm, he still had some confidence. However, when facing these two, he did not even have the thought of competing. The skeleton army and the summoning technique were almost beyond their understanding. Now with the addition of this barrier, they had far surpassed their peers. Perhaps some people were born to be worshipped by others. If they were treated as an opponent, it would be very painful. However, if they were treated as one of their own, it would be very satisfying. Di Beichen smiled and looked at Di Xiaofeng. Big brother, we brothers have one life. Hearing this, Emperor Xiaofeng's smile gradually widened, turning into a dazzling smile. You're right. Do you plan to tell others about the secret of the Bitter Sea Abyss in the future? Shengguan Yingying suddenly said. In the past, no one knew about the existence of the Bitter Sea Abyss. Now that they had discovered it, the location of the Bitter Sea Abyss would not change. Then should they tell others about this matter? Chapter 63-33. Since the Abyss of Agony has disappeared for so many years, the senior who did all this must have his reasons. Since that's the case, there's no need for us to ruin everything. Bailey Hongzhuang smirked and looked at the blue sea behind her. There was a very powerful force in the world there. However, we can spread the map fragment. If someone can gather all four of the map fragments, it means that he's fated with the Abyss of Agony. Who knows, there might be some cultivators who've succeeded in breaking through in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang's black and white eyes shone brightly like gems. She vaguely felt that this should be the senior's intention. If he really wanted this force to disappear from the world, he could have used a certain method to make the Abyss of Agony disappear or hide it forever. However, he let the Abyss of Agony sink to the bottom of the sea, but did not make it disappear completely. It must be because he could not bear to let it go. It would be a pity if such a powerful force disappeared just like that. The reason why it disappeared from most people's sight was to let the fated person come here and let people know that there was such a special and powerful inheritance in the world. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded. They also felt that it would be a pity if the news of the Abyss of Agony disappeared forever. If he didn't spread this map, there would be almost no cultivators coming to such a remote and desolate place. This is a good decision, I agree. Shengguan Yingying was the first to raise her hand in agreement. I agree too. Everyone chuckled. Not only did Bailey Hongzhuang and Zheng Ziren gain a lot from this trip, the others also gained a lot. Because they were bathed in the light of the Abyss of Agony, they felt that their hearts were calmer than ever before. There was a huge change in their state of mind. Beichen, since you've succeeded in breaking through, did your strength increase by a lot? In the past, as long as they succeeded in breaking through the two abysses, their strength would increase by a lot. It should be the same this time. I feel that the distance between us is getting bigger. Ziren looked up to the sky and let out a long sigh. Every day, he did not have any other thoughts. His only thought was to quickly increase his cultivation and not be left too far behind by Di Beichen. However, this guy was simply a freak. Even if he tried his best to catch up, the gap between the two of them seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. It was impossible to close the gap. Bewitching said slowly, "No, we've been taking the psychological test for more than a year. We haven't been cultivating, so our strength hasn't improved much." As soon as he said this, Xiren stared at Bewitching for a while and asked, "Is what you said true? You're not lying to me? Do I look that bored?" Bewitching asked. After repeatedly confirming that Bewitching was telling the truth, Xiren also laughed out loud. "Ha ha 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 ha. I finally found some sense of existence. Otherwise, it would be too uncomfortable to be unconsciously distanced from you." Di Xiaofeng and the others were also a little surprised. But thinking about it carefully, this situation was reasonable. If they not only obtained such a powerful method when breaking through, but their strength also increased rapidly, it would be too much of a blow. Chapter 63-34. Everyone headed towards the direction of the Di family. They had spent quite a lot of time on this trip. However, if the Di family knew about Bewitching and Hongzhuang's gains, they would be very pleased. However, just as everyone was moving forward, suddenly, multicolored light shone, and a dazzling light gradually appeared in the sky. A huge cloud emitting multicolored light slowly floated in the direction of everyone. That cloud was like a celestial cloud. It was a unique existence, dazzling and shocking. Almost at the moment this cloud appeared, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others noticed its existence. "What is that?" Shangguaninging exclaimed as she pointed at the cloud above. Even in broad daylight, this multicolored light was too dazzling. It was abnormally bright among the white clouds in the sky, and could be noticed at a glance. "There's actually such a cloud in this world." Bailey Union's expression was not much better than Shangguaning Ying's. This was really too shocking. This kind of scene had only appeared in her dreams before. She had never thought that it would actually appear in reality. Although Di Xiaofeng and the others did not speak, their eyes were also tightly locked on this rainbow cloud. This situation was simply beyond their understanding, and was unbelievable. Did we stay in the bitter abyss for too long? Is that why we're hallucinating? Bai Lianche's mind went blank. Wasn't this too unreal? Even if it really appeared in front of them, no one felt that it was real. When Xiren turned his gaze to Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang, "Is this the enchantment you guys cast? You want us to see your gains, so you set up such a beautiful scene?" Everyone's eyes fell on the two of them. Other than this explanation, they really couldn't think of any other explanation. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Union looked at each other. This situation was also completely out of their expectations. "This matter has nothing to do with us." Seeing the serious appearance of the two, everyone was slightly startled. When they once again looked towards the cloud that was blooming with multicolored light, everyone was confused. In the end, the cloud stopped in the sky not far away from the crowd. "Should we go up and take a look?" Di Xiaofeng's eyes were filled with amazement. "I seem to see a door in the clouds. Could it be that we found a door to a small world by chance?" A door appeared in the clouds. It was obvious that there was another world behind the door. It was just like the time when they ventured into the immortal cloud secret realm. Although the scene back then couldn't be compared to the scene before them, there were still some similarities. However, this also meant that the world behind this door was probably even stronger than the immortal cloud realm. A trace of curiosity arose in the hearts of everyone. It was rare to encounter such an opportunity, so it would be a pity if they didn't charge forward to take a look. "Go. Let's go take a look." Just as everyone was about to charge forward, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's voice suddenly rang out. "Pass through this door, and you will arrive at the crossing immortal region." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expression changed. They were filled with shock and astonishment. "The crossing immortal domain is behind this door?" "Nine-tailed Inferno Fox, you're not lying to us, right?" "Why would I lie to you about something like this?" Chapter 63-35. Everyone looked at each other. According to their understanding, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was not a demonic beast that liked to joke. Moreover, every word it said had its own basis. After all, It was a demonic beast from the immortal region. Moreover, it was a demonic beast of an extremely high level. It knew much more than they did. Didn't you say that the door to the immortal region has been closed? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. This was what she did not understand the most. According to Feng Qing, the immortal region had stopped the cultivators from the immortal region from ascending. Because there were more and more cultivators in the immortal region, the door to the immortal region had been closed. It was because of this that no cultivators from the upper realm had been able to successfully ascend to the immortal region. However, the door had suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Wasn't this a little strange? Indeed, the entrance to the immortal region has been closed. Could it be that something has happened recently, so the entrance has been opened again? His deep eyes were filled with thoughts. The situation in the immortal region had not remained unchanged. Could it be that something had happened in the past year? The entrance to the immortal region has been closed? The nine-tailed inferno fox was also a little surprised. The immortal region is the entrance for cultivators from the lower realm to ascend. How can it be closed so casually? Now that the nine-tailed inferno fox was someone they could trust, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching did not hide anything. They immediately told it what they knew about the immortal region and the immortal region. Simply bastards. After hearing everything, the nine-tailed inferno fox could not help but curse. These people are really daring. For their own benefits, they can even do such a thing. I'm afraid the entire immortal region will be in chaos. Seeing that the nine-tailed inferno fox was so angry, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. Although they also felt that the people of the immortal domain were too much to do such a thing, they didn't need to be so angry. The crossing immortal domain has always been the entrance for cultivators from the lower planes to ascend. Although there aren't many cultivators from each lower plane who can ascend, there are still quite a lot of cultivators gathered together. If the entrance to the crossing immortal domain was closed, it meant that the cultivators from the lower plane could not ascend, causing some cultivators to be unable to improve their strength. Now that the celestial realm is lacking some fresh blood, those fellows think that they have occupied such a good place. What a joke! The nine-tailed inferno fox sneered. The rules set by the heavens naturally have its reasons. If these fellows continue to act willfully, they will be punished sooner or later. Hearing the nine-tailed inferno fox's furious words, Bailey Hongzhuang slightly nodded her head. She also felt that the actions of the immortal domain cultivators were too wrong. However, she had never thought about the punishment. Of now, it seemed that the situation was more complicated than they had imagined. Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan listened to Di Beicheng's conversation with the nine-tailed inferno fox about the immortal domain and the crossing immortal domain. Their faces were blank, and their hearts were filled with shock. The crossing celestial domain, what they knew so far was only a name. As for the celestial realm, it was a place that they had never even heard of. However, not only did Beicheng and the others know about the existence of the crossing immortal domain, they even knew that the entrance was closed. Chapter 63-36. The two of them were confused. They only felt that they were in a completely different place from Beicheng and the rest. These things were secrets to the entire upper realm, but to them, they were like rumors on the streets. No matter how they thought about it, they couldn't understand how Di Beicheng and the rest knew about all this. Now that the entrance to the crossing immortal domain has appeared, perhaps there have been changes in this 1 year. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beicheng. She naturally didn't want the entrance to the crossing immortal domain to be closed, but she hoped that the entrance to the immortal domain could also be opened. Otherwise, even if they entered the crossing immortal domain, their ending would be the same as Feng Qing's previous situation. Other than being forced to work as a coolie, there was probably no other path for him to take. Previously, they had already done manual labor in the spirit-devouring mine. After so long, would the people in the spirit-devouring mine still be looking for them? If they fell into the spirit-devouring mine again, they would be dead. That might not be the case. The nine-tailed inferno fox suddenly said. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Why? The reason why the two of you were able to attract the entrance to the crossing immortal domain is because you passed the inheritance of the bitter sea abyss, and your state of mind has greatly improved. For the matter of ascension, other than looking at the cultivator's strength, it also requires the cultivator to increase their state of mind, or have a deep understanding of the laws of heaven and earth. The bitter sea abyss is the most amazing inheritance in the lower realm. Through the power of the bitter sea abyss, it's not strange that the change in your state of mind would attract the entrance to the crossing immortal domain. Some powers can't be stopped even if the crossing immortal domain closes the entrance, so the situation may not be as simple as you think. The nine-tailed inferno fox slowly said. Hearing this, everyone immediately understood. The nine-tailed inferno fox must be talking about that kind of force majeure. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang understood. As they got closer to the clouds, she also saw a simple and gorgeous door. Looking from below, they didn't feel that it was so grand. Only when they got closer did they realize that the door was much bigger than they imagined. The grand and majestic aura of this place was definitely not something that the upper realms buildings could compare to. Just from the entrance alone, one could see how powerful this place was. When Xiren and the others also wanted to take a closer look at the situation, but found that after getting a little closer, they couldn't get any closer. An invisible force imprisoned them, and the holy radiance of the multicolored light made them want to worship it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had a different feeling. They only felt a strong force trying to suck them in. Di Xiaofeng stared blankly at the door in front of him, his heart filled with shock. Previously, when he heard that Shu Yu had been to crossing immortal domain, his heart was filled with yearning. However, other than yearning, there was more of a distant feeling. He only felt that it was an extremely distant existence. How many cultivators wanted to enter the crossing celestial domain, but had no way to do so? However, right now this great door was right in front of them. It was releasing multicolored light, divine and dignified. All of this was so close to them unknowingly. His younger brother and sister-in-law were about to enter the crossing celestial domain. Beichen, are you planning to go to the immortal domain? Chapter 6337. According to their current understanding, the situation in the crossing immortal domain should be very dangerous. If the door to the crossing immortal domain was not open, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's appearance would definitely attract the attention of the entire crossing immortal domain. The tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. Once they entered the crossing immortal domain, it would not be easy to come back. If they were in the abandoned immortal forest, they could still go to the chaotic immortal domain to gain an identity. However, if they went to the crossing immortal domain and could not come out, it would be really troublesome. After all, they could only enter the crossing immortal domain when the people from the crossing immortal domain open the door. The situation in the crossing immortal domain is a little dangerous now. Bai Lianche also said. However, as a contract beast, if Hongzhuang went, he would definitely follow. Bailey Hongzhuang also fell into hesitation. The crossing immortal domain was indeed a place that she wanted to go to. This was because only when the door to the crossing immortal domain was opened, her family would have the chance to ascend. However, if they entered the crossing immortal domain alone, would they be able to change the situation in the crossing immortal domain? If they could not, it would be very dangerous for them to enter the crossing immortal domain. After a while, Bewitching said, "We won't go for now." Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bewitching and nodded. Before they had enough confidence, it was not a wise decision to go to the crossing immortal domain, let alone when the door to the crossing immortal domain was closed. Di Xiaofeng did not expect the two of them to make such a decision. He was stunned. You're choosing to give up such a good opportunity? Currently, countless powerhouses from the upper realm wanted to go to the crossing immortal domain, but they did not have the chance. Now that the opportunity was in front of them, they chose to give it up. This was too unbelievable. If they missed this opportunity, they did not know when they would be able to go again in the future. Seeing how anxious Di Xiaofeng was, Bewitching smiled faintly and said, "Big brother, there's nothing to be sad about. We'll go eventually, but the situation in the crossing immortal domain is very bad now. If we go, Hongzhuang and I might not be able to protect ourselves. It's a wise decision not to go now. Is the crossing immortal domain that dangerous? Di Xiaofeng was slightly startled. Even though he heard everyone's words, he did not take it to heart. It was a place that was much stronger than the upper realm. If it were any other cultivator, they would not give up on it. The crossing immortal domain's current crossing immortal domain is indeed very immortal domains. Di Xiaofeng sighed. It was such a pity to give up on such an opportunity. Seeing this, Di Beichen smiled and said, Big brother, do you think Xu Yu is powerful? He's been to the crossing celestial region. Of course he's powerful, replied Di Xiaofeng. In the entire upper world, Xu Yu was publicly acknowledged as the #1 expert. He wasn't sure if he was the strongest, but just based on the fact that Xu Yu had been to the crossing immortal domain, his status wasn't something that other cultivators could compare to. What if I tell you that he escaped from the crossing immortal domain? Di Beichen smiled. Xu Yu was very powerful in the eyes of others, but in reality, he was just a deserter who could not survive in the crossing immortal domain. Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan were both stunned by his words. Chapter 63-38. Are you telling the truth? Di Xiaofeng was in disbelief. This was the first time he had heard of this. Di Beichen nodded slightly. The crossing immortal domain is actually the place where the more outstanding cultivators of each plane ascend to. Only after ascending to the crossing immortal domain and achieving a certain level of success can one truly ascend to the immortal domain. In other words, becoming an immortal. Bailey Yunyan and Di Xiaofeng's eyes lit up. Becoming an immortal was something they all dreamed of. So now that the entrance to the immortal domain has been closed, it means that these people can't become immortals? Di Xiaofeng was smart. After the shock, he had already figured out the reason. That's right. To us, the cultivators in crossing immortal domain are experts, but to the people in the immortal domain, they are nothing. Di Xiaofeng nodded. Although this was cruel, it was the truth. Although we don't know who decided to close the entrance to the immortal domain and why, we can be sure that the cultivators in crossing immortal domain have a miserable ending. On one hand, they can't ascend to the immortal domain. On the other hand, they can't return to their previous plane. Under such circumstances, many cultivators in the immortal region directly treated them as coolies and made them mine ores. At this point, Di Beichen had no intention of hiding anything from Di Xiaofeng. To them, crossing immortal domain was a very distant matter. But now it was no longer distant. Perhaps, it wouldn't be long before they could come into contact with all of this. These mines aren't the ordinary mines we usually mine. These mines will cause irreversible damage to the cultivator's body after a long time. Bailey Hongzhuang added. After hearing all this, Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan's hearts couldn't calm down for a long time. They never thought that the world they yearned for so much would be like this. The so-called crossing immortal domain was actually such a place. No wonder Xu Yu rarely talks about the upper realm. So this is the real reason. Di Xiaofeng suddenly understood. This place that was incomparably glorious in the eyes of the upper realm cultivators was actually filled with danger and oppression. If it was anyone else, they probably wouldn't be willing to talk about it. Beichen, if that's really the case, then you shouldn't go for the time being. Di Xiaofeng's expression was serious. Not only do we have to face all sorts of dangers there, we can't even cultivate. It's better to stay in the upper realm. Although the cultivation here might not be as good as the crossing immortal domain, with our current status in the upper realm, we can live very well. Di Beichen smiled faintly. After deciding not to go with Bailey Hongzhuang, the entrance to the crossing immortal domain gradually disappeared. Although it was a wise decision not to go, for some reason, seeing the entrance disappear makes me feel a little regretful. Shangguan Yingying looked at the direction where the entrance of the crossing immortal domain disappeared. Once they entered, it would be a whole new world. Don't worry about it. Since you have already met the requirements to enter the crossing immortal domain, it is only a matter of time before you appear again, said the nine-tailed inferno fox. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. If they could go to the chaotic immortal domain first, and then go to the crossing immortal domain, the situation would be much better. Chapter 6339. As Xiren's voice fell, everyone chuckled. Indeed, they had been cultivating together for such a long time. If they had to separate, everyone was really unwilling from the bottom of their hearts. The reason why Beichen and Hong Zhuang could come into contact with the gate of the crossing immortal domain so quickly was inseparable from the Bittersea Abyss. And if they wanted to come into contact with the crossing immortal domain, strength was one aspect, and mental state was another aspect. It would probably take a long time to catch up with them. Other things weren't what they cared about the most. What they cared about the most was if they couldn't help Beichen and the others when they needed help. Don't worry. Since young, when have you not been following me? Beichen looked at Xiren teasingly. Since young, except for when they were in their respective sects, the two were basically together. Xiren looked embarrassed. Although that's true, I'm already so old now. You're talking as if I'm still a follower when I was young. As soon as this was said, everyone laughed. Xiren, you finally have a clear understanding of yourself. Beichen said earnestly. You're really not polite at all. Xiren rolled his eyes. In the past, Beichen would at least explain a little, but now he simply admitted it. Everyone walked forward. When they came, they only felt that the journey was very long, but when they went back, the journey seemed much faster. Beichen, I don't understand. How do you know so much about the immortal domain? In the dead of night, Di Xiaofeng and Beichen leaned against a tree. He couldn't help but ask the doubts in his heart. Since that day, he had always had doubts in his heart. This information was probably only known to people in the immortal domain. Logically speaking, Beichen and the others shouldn't have any way to know about it. However, Beichen and the others were very familiar with the situation in the upper realm. This was simply inconceivable in his opinion. Beichen wasn't surprised by Di Xiaofeng's curiosity. In fact, he thought that Di Xiaofeng would have asked him a long time ago. He didn't expect him to wait until now. Big brother, actually we've been to the immortal region before. Beichen smiled faintly. Hearing Beichen's words, Di Xiaofeng widened his eyes and said in disbelief, how is this possible? You haven't even been to the immortal domain. How could you go there directly? To be precise, we went to the immortal realm, but we didn't enter the real immortal realm, so we have some understanding of the situation there. Emperor Xiaofeng shook his head and frowned. Don't beat around the bush. My question is, how could you have been to the celestial realm? You'll have to ask Hong Zhuang about that. Beichen smiled faintly. It's all thanks to Hong Zhuang that we were able to go to the immortal region. What does that mean? Di Xiaofeng was confused. He felt that the more Beichen explained, the more complicated things became. He didn't understand. Beichen thought for a moment before telling him about how Hong Zhuang opened the entrance to the abandoned immortal forest. After hearing this, Di Xiaofeng fell into shock for a long time. Why do I feel like everything that happened to you is so strange? If it was anyone else, I wouldn't believe it at all. However, it happened to you guys, so no matter how unbelievable it is, it's true. Chapter 6340. Actually, we were also very surprised when we first found out. Beichen was very calm facing Di Xiaofeng's speechlessness. The chaos ring was already very powerful. Without it, the thorns they encountered along the way would have been even more shocking. So the closed-door cultivation that you talked about was actually going to the abandoned immortal forest? At first, Di Xiaofeng felt that it was strange. If it was just cultivation, it wouldn't matter if someone disturbed them. Now that he understood everything, he completely understood. Beichen nodded slightly. That's right. I finally understand. Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with realization. You guys are really too terrifying. Even such a fortuitous encounter could happen. But since you guys can go to the abandoned immortal forest, why didn't you tell everyone? You should know that Father and the others all want to come into contact with the crossing immortal domain. With Father's strength, if the entrance to the crossing immortal domain wasn't closed, he should be able to come into contact with the crossing immortal domain very quickly. Actually, it's not a bad thing that the entrance to the crossing immortal domain is closed. Otherwise, everyone's situation would be even worse. The reason why we didn't say it was because we didn't go to the abandoned immortal forest through normal means. This is only a shortcut. But if everyone follows this path, it will definitely destroy the balance. The heavens have their own rules. If we really destroy the balance, it might not be a good thing. It might even lead to an even greater disaster. Bewitching's face darkened. It wasn't that he didn't consider this, but after thinking about it carefully, he realized that it wasn't a good thing. That was why he didn't say it directly. Di Xiaofeng fell into silence. After a while he nodded. You're right. If this gets out of hand, there might be a lot of trouble. There were many things where blindly taking things would lead to great risks. He didn't see it as clearly as Bewitching. So the stones you brought back last time? The stones from the immortal domain. Bewitching smiled. Di Xiaofeng's face was calm. No wonder, I've never seen them in the upper realm. If there were, this news wouldn't have been able to be hidden. The cultivation resources in the immortal region are indeed much more abundant than those in the upper realm. However, the reason why we were able to obtain these spirit-devouring stones is also a coincidence. Frankly speaking, we were captured to mine, and these spirit-devouring stones are our harvest. It can't be. You were actually captured and sent to mine? Di Xiaofeng was stunned. He always felt that with the strength of Bewitching and the others, they should be doing well in the immortal realm. In front of the experts of the immortal domain, we are like ants. That's why we came back from the abandoned immortal forest. Right now the most important thing is to increase my cultivation. When the time comes, I'll go to the abandoned immortal forest. At the very least, I'll have a better chance of survival. Noticing that Di Xiaofeng was very interested in the immortal realm, Bewitching slowly told him everything they knew. Di Xiaofeng listened attentively. He originally had many fantasies about the crossing immortal domain and the immortal domain. But after Bewitching's introduction, the plates in his mind gradually became clear. However, at the same time, he also understood that the immortal realm was an even crueler world. Chapter 6341. That's the case for now. The immortal area is in a difficult situation. Unless the situation changes, we will not be able to open it. Based on our analysis, the situation will not change in a short amount of time. Bewitching's eyes darkened. The situation in the immortal area was not very clear. Of course, they had only been to the abandoned immortal forest, and did not know much about the immortal area. The seniors should have some understanding. Even though they usually stayed in the abandoned immortal forest, the hermit experts must have their own methods. It was just that the seniors did not tell them these things. He was not surprised by this. Before they have enough strength, knowing about this was useless. Other than increasing the pressure and fear, they had no objections. Just like how they already had the map to the bitter sea. If they came here before, they would have lost their lives. Therefore, not telling them was for their own good. I didn't think the immortal area would be so complicated. I always thought that after ascending, I would go to a paradise. Now it seems like I was too naive. The immortal area is just a place with more competition. Di Xiaofeng sighed. Before, he had many beautiful dreams about the immortal area. Just the name itself represented beauty. However, the situation was not like that. When his dreams were destroyed, he felt more relaxed, because he was not as stubborn as before. Originally, I thought the same as you. However, after the senior's guidance I understood. The reason why immortals are immortals is because they can do things that normal people cannot. Immortals are all cultivators who ascended. It's just that they are more powerful. Bewitching's lips curled up slightly. It turned out that everything was so simple. They had really thought too much in the past. After talking to you tonight, I feel like everything has become much clearer. Di Xiaofeng smiled. If there is a chance, take me to the abandoned immortal forest. Of course. With everyone hurrying on their way, they finally returned to the Di clan. Seeing the familiar scene in front of them, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. This feeling of returning home would always bring a feeling of joy. Bewitching, you're finally back from your training. Lin Yunqing was all smiles as she looked at Bewitching and the others, her eyes filled with joy. Mother, how is everyone these days? Di Beichen quickly stepped forward and stopped in front of Lin Yunqing. Now that our family's position is stable, everyone is naturally doing well. You can rest assured. Lin Yun's clear and gentle voice was like a clear spring that flowed through everyone's hearts, bringing a trace of refreshing coolness. Hearing this affirmative answer, everyone quietly heaved a sigh of relief. When they were away from home, they were most worried that something would happen to their clan. Even if they knew that the possibility of something like this happening was very small with their clan's current status, they still couldn't dispel the wisp of worry in their hearts. However, there is one more thing that is more troublesome. The old master has been unhappy for many days because of this matter. Lin Yunqing sighed. Let's not talk about this for now. You've finally come back, and you must be tired from the journey. I'll order people to prepare first, and then inform everyone to welcome you back. Chapter 6342. The news of Di Beichen's return quickly spread throughout the Di family. Everyone was secretly happy. Di Yujue and the others were also overjoyed when they heard the news. In the evening, the Di family even held a banquet to welcome Di Beichen and the others. Beichen, where did you go to train this time? Di Yujue smiled as he looked at everyone. In just a few short years, these children had grown at an astonishing speed. Compared to when they had just arrived from Penglai Island, Beichen and the others had matured a lot. Their mannerisms were more and more in line with the image of the young masters of the Di family. However, Di Beichen's expression froze for a moment when he heard Di Yujue's question. However, it disappeared in the blink of an eye. We went to a very remote place and found some small opportunities. Everyone was in a happy mood and did not notice Di Beichen's subtle expression. Usually, many cultivators would choose to go out and train when their cultivation speed slowed down. It did not matter whether they could find a good place to train or not. Even if they could change their state of mind and improve their strength by going out to train, it was possible that they could improve their strength. Only Di Yujue noticed Di Beichen's subtle expression and understood that there was something more to this matter. However, since Beichen did not want to talk about it, he would not ask. Bailey Hongzhuang was sitting next to Mu Lingbing and the others. She was surprised to find that her parents' strength had improved beyond her imagination. Your parents were cultivation geniuses in the past. Although they were not as good as you, they were still pretty good. Mu Lingbing smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. I know this. Father and mother, your reputation in the lower realms was very good. Hongzhuang, your parents' reputation in the upper realm isn't bad either. Di Yujue suddenly chuckled. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Her phoenix eyes revealed a trace of doubt. Father, what do you mean? They went to the mercenary guild to train while you were away. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood what was going on, and her eyes were filled with shock. You guys actually went to the mercenary association to train? I think you must have made a name for yourself there, right? Hongzhuang, you really know your parents well. Di Linxian praised. As it turned out, Lan Yunxiao and the others had been in seclusion ever since they came to the upper realm. Although their cultivation speed wasn't slow, if they didn't practice frequently, their battle strength would decline. Previously, when they followed the Di family's team, they had also gone out to train. However, this was still not enough for them. Thus, after some discussion, they decided to go out to train. This way, they would be able to increase their cultivation even more. Moreover, the children had never stopped working hard to increase their strength. Even if their cultivation wasn't as good as the children's, they still had to increase their strength as quickly as possible. Mo Yunjue and the others were also amazed. Just by sensing this aura, they realized that their strength had increased greatly in the past year. You guys are really amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled brightly. Her parents had always made her feel proud. Seeing the splendor in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, Lan Yunxiao's smile grew deeper and deeper. Chapter 6343. Grandfather, I heard that something has made you unhappy recently? After 3 rounds of wine, Di Beichen finally asked about the matter that everyone had been concerned about. As soon as Di Beichen finished speaking, everyone's gazes turned towards Di Linxian. because this was something that everyone had been concerned about. Di Linxian sighed when he heard this and said, "All of you have left for over a year, so I presume you're aware that Xiao Sou's child has been born." All of them nodded. Xiao Sou was already very close to giving birth when they left that day, so the child must have been born by now. According to our judgment, the other 2 keys should be in Xiao Sou's possession. So we've been constantly sending people to keep an eye on Xiao Sou and the others. However, we never expected that sly old fellow, Shu Yu, to have made plans a long time ago, and actually allowed them to escape. Di Linxian was depressed when this was mentioned. This matter was related to whether Beichen would be able to obtain the inheritance. In his opinion, defeating Shu Yu was only a matter of time, and it wouldn't be long before he would be able to defeat Shu Yu. At that time, they would be able to snatch the secret key back, and all the problems would be solved. Now that these fellows had escaped, even if their clans were quite powerful now, it wasn't easy to find a few people who were intentionally hiding in the entire upper realm. Not to mention that one of them was Shu Yu. With Shu Yu's strength, it wouldn't be difficult for him to protect Xiao Sou and the others. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others hadn't expected this to happen as well, and their expressions had become unsightly. Since Beichen had entered the land of inheritance, all of them had realized the importance of the inheritance. Now this news had truly caught them off guard, and they felt that it was a pity. Di Yujue and the others had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces as well. They'd been paying attention to all of this very carefully, because they were deeply afraid that they would escape, but they hadn't expected that something like this would still happen in the end. "Grandfather, don't be too angry over this matter," Di Beichen said slowly. Shu Yu should have already made up his mind when he decided to protect Xiao Sou. As the strongest powerhouse in the upper realm, it shouldn't be difficult for him to protect the 2 of them. This matter is not our problem. If they want to escape, we will not be able to avoid it. However, I believe that we will find them sooner or later. Although this was very bad news, the matter had already reached this point, and Di Beichen was very open-minded. With Xiao Sou's personality, even if they didn't look for her, Xiao Sou would find them sooner or later. The only difference was that they would have to wait a little longer. Even so, that was nothing. Seeing that Di Beichen, who was the most involved in this matter, was so calm, Di Linxian sighed with satisfaction. Di Beichen's temperament was truly incomparable to the average person's. It was no wonder that he could reach this stage. We'll find them as soon as possible. As long as they're still in the upper realm, they'll be discovered sooner or later. Di Linxian's eyes narrowed. Because of this matter, he and Shu Yu were now at odds. When he sees Shu Yu again in the future, he must defeat that fellow. When the crowd saw Di Linxian's serious look, the frustration in their hearts dissipated considerably. During the next period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not leave. Instead, they stayed in the Di family with peace of mind. Chapter 63-44. When Mu Lingbing and the others found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were going to rest in the family, they put aside their plans to go to the mercenary guild for the time being. To them, being together with their family was the most precious thing. What's more, they felt that Hongzhuang was like a phoenix that was about to spread its wings and fly. Sooner or later, she would fly out of this world, so the time they spent together was especially precious. Bailey Hongzhuang rested for a few days in a row, accompanying her family to the Emperor Cloud City to visit the temple fair and enjoy the scenery. She found that ever since her family went to the mercenary guild to train, their mental state had improved. In Nangong Wu's words, it was like returning to the time when they were young. In the past, they had always lived like this, but after they established their sect, they spent more time in the sect. Now that everyone had returned to their previous lives, they felt that these days were very interesting. This feeling is like living a new life. The situation in the upper realm is very different from the lower realm, and there are many interesting things that happened during the training. Nangong Wu was full of exultation as she talked about the things that happened during their training. It's worth mentioning that the effects of my explosives are very good. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. Her master's wife's explosives had always been very good, and now that she had improved, there was no need to say more about the effects. It was said that even in the D family, the effects of her explosives were praised by everyone. Now there are many cultivators in the D family who want to learn how to make explosives. Your master's wife is very proud of herself. Yu Linfeng said with a smile. Hong Zhuang, I feel that you seem to have changed after coming back from your training. Nan Gongwu carefully looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang, her willowy eyebrows slightly raised, revealing a puzzled expression. In fact, she had noticed this long ago, but she couldn't figure out what was wrong. What changes? Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled faintly. I always feel that you have a more reserved temperament. You used to have an extraordinary temperament, but now you have an indescribable purity. Nan Gongwu nodded. That's right, it's purity. Your eyes are purer than before. As Nan Gongwu's voice fell, Yu Linfeng and the others also carefully sized up Bailey Hong Zhuang. In fact, they had vaguely felt it before. But after Xiao Sou's reminder, they also discovered the problem. There was no doubt that Hong Zhuang was a beauty. No matter who it was, they would be stunned when they saw her. And they were no exception. However, the current Bailey Hong Zhuang had a feeling that the more one looked at her, the more stunning she became. It was very easy for people to keep their eyes fixed on her. Perhaps it has something to do with the change in my mental state. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled slightly. She had also noticed this change in herself. This was the effect of the heaven's eye, because it could see through all the illusions in the world. Even her own eyes had become clearer and brighter. A change in your mental state can make you more beautiful? Nan Gongwu was slightly startled. It seems that I have to think about how to improve my mental state. As soon as she said this, Yu Linfeng and the others couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 6345. Nine-tailed Inferno Fox. Where is the demonic beast you want to take me to? Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng were chatting in the room. They were very curious when Nine-tailed Inferno Fox mentioned this. Nine-tailed Inferno Fox would rather contract with Di Beichen. This was very strange. They also vaguely felt that this demonic beast should be very impressive. If this demonic beast was in the upper realm, they could prepare to go now. But if it wasn't in the upper realm, then this matter would take some time to complete. In the immortal region, Nine-tailed Inferno Fox replied. Hearing that, Di Beichen revealed an expression of as expected. Then it seems that we'll have to wait for a while. The immortal region is more dangerous than the upper realm, and the place I'm taking you to is even more dangerous. So you don't need to think about this for now. The only thing you need to think about now is how to quickly increase your strength. Otherwise, you won't even have the right to stay in the immortal region. Nine-tailed Inferno Fox's voice was calm, but everyone could faintly hear a hint of anxiousness. If possible, it would want to go to the immortal region immediately, but there was still a big gap in strength. So no matter how much it wanted everyone to go earlier, it could only wait. Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng glanced at each other. The place Nine-tailed Inferno Fox wanted to take them to was indeed not simple. You should hurry up and cultivate. As the elder brother, you can't even compare to the younger brother. It's so embarrassing. Nine-tailed Inferno Fox sighed and shook its head, as if it couldn't bear to see its master's depravity. Di Xiaofeng originally felt that the pressure of going to the immortal region wasn't small. He thought that he had to quickly increase his cultivation. Otherwise, if he followed everyone to the abandoned immortal forest, he might need everyone's help. That wasn't what he wanted. But now that Nine-tailed Inferno Fox looked down on him, his mood became even more complicated. Beichen is a genius. There's naturally a gap between me and him. Di Xiaofeng's expression was calm. But don't worry, I'll definitely increase my cultivation as soon as possible. I won't delay your journey. It's good that you know. The Nine-tailed Inferno Fox said indifferently. When Emperor Xiaofeng heard this, he really wanted to punch the Nine-tailed Inferno Fox. However, this contract beast was stronger than him. Even if he had resentment in his heart, it was useless. Who asked him to not be able to beat it? Thinking of this, Di Xiaofeng said angrily. Beichen, I'm going into seclusion. You should go back and cultivate too. Di Beichen was a little surprised to see Di Xiaofeng sending him off. However, after noticing the fighting spirit in the former's eyes, The corners of his lips curled up slightly. I don't believe I can't control my own contracted beast. Di Xiaofeng made a decision in his heart. It was fine if he was dissed by the nine-tailed inferno fox, but he couldn't let this situation continue. Sooner or later, he would take back his dignity as a master. In the following period of time, Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan directly announced that they were in closed-door cultivation. When Di Yujue found out about this, he was a little surprised. With Di Xiaofeng's personality, quietly going into seclusion wasn't suitable for him. He didn't expect him to really have the ability to go into seclusion. Beichen, is there a reason for this? Di Beichen smiled faintly. Father should know that big brother contracted a nine-tailed inferno fox. Chapter 6346. The nine-tailed inferno fox is very strong. It usually doesn't listen to Big Brother's words. So Big Brother wants to quickly increase his cultivation so that he can control the nine-tailed inferno fox. Di Beichen's eyes were smiling. Although with the nine-tailed inferno fox's strength, Big Brother still has a long way to go. But he believes in Big Brother's ability. It's only a matter of time. What's more, although the nine-tailed inferno fox said it didn't like it, but through this short period of time, the nine-tailed inferno fox's attitude was obviously much better. It must be known that the nine-tailed inferno fox was too lazy to say a word to them before. I see. Di Yujue understood and immediately chuckled. This is not bad. It can grind Xiaofeng's temper. Actually, your big brother's cultivation talent is not bad. But he was used to running around and couldn't calm down. Now that he can cultivate peacefully, he should have a lot of improvement. Di Beichen nodded slightly. Big Brother is also a cultivation genius. Otherwise the nine-tailed inferno fox wouldn't have recognized him as its master. Although the nine-tailed inferno fox's decision to recognize Di Xiaofeng as its master had something to do with him, it had nothing to do with him when the nine-tailed inferno fox and Di Xiaofeng first formed a connection. In the end, it was fate that brought them together. It's rare to see you in the family peacefully. However, Beichen, is the place you're going to this time very mysterious? Di Yujue stared at Di Beichen. He still remembered the latter's expression that day. There must be something unusual about this place. Di Beichen also knew that he couldn't hide it from Di Yujue, so he didn't hide it. When we were in the lower realm, Hong Zhuang had collected 4 pieces of the map. The place we're going to this time is the place these 4 pieces of the map are pointing to. Di Yujue was a little surprised. The place the map is pointing to is in the upper realm? Di Beichen nodded slightly. Father, I'm afraid you won't be able to guess where it is. Tell me. The bitter abyss. Di Yujue's expression suddenly changed. The bitter abyss that has been missing for a long time? It's right there. Di Yujue was silent for a moment before he said, I didn't expect there to be such a coincidence. The bitter sea abyss has been missing for so many years that it has almost been forgotten by the people of the upper realm. I didn't expect you to be able to find it. It's really surprising. Did you have any gains this time? Hong Zhuang and I have both passed the challenge. Di Beichen replied, and then continued. But the checkpoint of the Sea of Bitterness is very scary, and there are many twists and turns in it. Oh, Di Yujue was interested. Why don't you tell me about it? Di Beichen sat down at the side. The father and son chatted about their views while drinking tea. It was rare for them to have such a leisurely time to have a good chat. I didn't expect there to be so many stories behind the disappearance of the bitter sea abyss. Di Yujue had a look of realization. In that case, this place is really not an ordinary danger. Di Beichen nodded slightly. It's indeed very dangerous. Father, you can go and have a look if you want to. But you must think carefully before you try to pass the checkpoint. This checkpoint is really difficult. Even if I was lucky enough to pass it, I still can't help but feel scared when I think about it. At that time, he almost couldn't pass the checkpoint several times because the inhuman things were too abnormal. Fortunately, he managed to survive in the end. Chapter 6347. Looking at Di Beichen's fearful expression, Di Yujue understood how terrifying the bitter sea abyss was. Ordinary training wouldn't make Beichen reveal such an expression, especially after hearing about the contents of the test. He couldn't help but think about whether he could overcome all of this. The answer to this question was a question mark. Even he wasn't sure. Since the ancient sea abyss is locked at the bottom of the sea, the reason is indeed unusual. Dujua sighed. Hearing what you said, its disappearance actually saved the lives of many cultivators. Indeed. But it is indeed a place that makes people revere. Beichen smiled faintly. Even if we don't challenge it, we might gain quite a bit from taking a look at it. Beichen believed that Dujua wouldn't have any problems with the changing weather and the initial stage. It was just that the later stages were more terrifying. If he wasn't confident enough, it was best not to participate. Dujua sighed. If there's a chance, I will go and take a look too. Hopefully my state of mind will change. Father, you seem to be worried? Beichen sized up Dujua. Usually, Dujua was confident and calm. However, there was a hint of worry between his brows today. Actually, it's nothing much. I just thought that since Shuyu could go to the crossing immortal domain, we should be able to do it too. Unfortunately, until now, I don't even know how to go to the crossing immortal domain. Comparing the two, I feel really helpless. Dujua's expression was complicated. Because Shuyu was an expert who had been to the crossing immortal domain, he was much stronger than ordinary cultivators in the upper realm. He had already come into contact with something that no one else had. If they wanted to defeat Shuyu, they might not be able to do so even if their cultivation level was high enough. As long as they didn't come into contact with the crossing immortal domain, it meant that they hadn't reached Shuyu's level. Even if he did not personally make a move, he knew that he was no match for Shuyu. Beichen finally understood Dujua's thoughts. He smiled faintly and said, Father, the situation isn't as you think. The reason why no one went to the crossing immortal domain all these years isn't because everyone is inferior to Shuyu. Then why? Dujua was slightly stunned and somewhat puzzled. Because the entrance to the crossing immortal domain is closed, cultivators from the upper realm are unable to enter the crossing immortal domain. Beichen smiled faintly. He didn't expect his father to be troubled by this problem. But it wasn't a problem. The entrance to the crossing immortal domain is closed? Dujua was confused. The entrance can close? Beichen nodded slightly, pushing the blame of the entire matter onto the nine-tailed inferno fox. At the same time, he resolved Dujua's confusion. I see. Dujua instantly understood, and his mood became much better. You didn't make this up just to comfort me, right? Even if you asked me to make up this kind of news, I wouldn't be able to. Beichen smiled. Hearing you say this, I am relieved. Fortunately, the nine-tailed inferno fox came from the immortal domain. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to understand this situation. Father, you and grandfather don't have to worry about this. The entrance to the crossing immortal domain will open sooner or later. You will go and take a look sooner or later. Chapter 6348. Peaceful days always pass quickly. As Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan went into seclusion, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others cultivated while learning other methods. When they were in the abandoned immortal forest, they had the guidance of several seniors, so their speed of improvement was also very fast. Now that they hadn't practiced properly for more than a year, everyone naturally had to spend more energy to study. After all, it wasn't easy to master a few skills, so they couldn't forget it. Bailey Hongzhuang had always memorized the medical knowledge she learned. However, there weren't many medicinal herbs from the immortal domain in the upper realm. Although she put some medicinal herbs in the chaos ring, they couldn't withstand her refining, and were used up not long after. Fortunately, the process of refining also made her remember this knowledge more deeply. She believed that when she returned to the abandoned immortal forest, Grandma Hua wouldn't say that she had regressed. In addition, Bailey Hongzhuang also began to teach Beichen some medical knowledge. Although Beichen didn't have great attainments in medical skills, it was undoubtedly best to have some judgment and countermeasures when encountering some situations. The immortal domain was very dangerous, and the chaotic immortal domain was even more so. Since they had to go there sooner or later, the more skills they had, the higher their chances of success would be. Beichen's intelligence was needless to say. Over the years, under the influence of Bailey Hongzhuang, he already had a certain understanding. Now that he had to learn from the beginning, his speed was very fast. In addition, the two also focused on formations. Formations were actually a powerful method. As long as it was used properly, it could have a very good effect. This was something that they had already experienced before. Beichen's formations originated from He Shinjuan's inheritance. Compared to the formations that others learned, it was undoubtedly much stronger. In addition, with the guidance of the seniors, there was naturally no need to say much about the progress. Although there were still many formations that hadn't been successfully used, through Beichen's continuous study, he understood more and more basic formations. On this point, Bailey Hongzhuang naturally had to consult him. Therefore, during this period of time, almost everyone had a very fulfilling time. Beichen, I've already given all the potions I've refined to my family, but there's not much left. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at her remaining reserves, her eyebrows slightly wrinkled. The consumption rate of these things was very fast. Beichen understood. Hongzhuang had already mentioned this matter a few days ago. At this moment, they were probably really exhausted. It's been quite some time since we left the abandoned immortal forest. I'm sure the commotion from back then has passed. Why don't we take a look at the abandoned immortal forest? Beichen suggested with a smile, as he looked at the worried face in front of him. Upon hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. Really? Although we caused a huge commotion at that time, and inevitably caused some trouble, it was impossible for them to keep their attention on us. Even if there are still people searching, there won't be as many people as before. It's not a problem for us to be careful. Beichen thought to himself. In fact, a while ago he had already considered this point. Chapter 6349. Bailey Hongzhuang was deep in thought. She wanted to go to the abandoned immortal forest as soon as possible, but she did not want to bring unnecessary trouble to the seniors. She had already troubled the seniors with the spirit-devouring mine. She knew that with her master's personality, he would definitely not care about such things. However, since the seniors had chosen to live in the abandoned immortal forest with their identities concealed, they definitely did not want to care about the trivial matters of the world. It would be a sin if the seniors' original intentions were affected because of them. Why don't we go to the abandoned immortal forest to take a look and ask about Zhongli Mu's current situation? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows as she pondered. Beichen nodded. Sure, let's go take a look. After the two of them decided, they headed straight to the abandoned immortal forest, without informing the others. It would not be too late to tell the others after they understood the situation in the abandoned immortal forest. If the situation was unclear, it would be a burden for everyone to go together. When the two of them arrived at the abandoned immortal forest and saw the familiar scene before them, they could not help but smile. In the blink of an eye, they had not been here for more than a year. Thinking about the time they had spent training, they really missed it. Let's go take a look at Zhongli Mu's cultivation place first, Bailey Hongzhuang suggested. According to their plan, they naturally wanted to find Zhongli Mu and understand the situation before making a decision. It's been more than a year. I don't know if Zhongli Mu's cultivation place has changed. Let's go take a look first. Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, but his eyes were quietly looking around, full of caution and caution. The frequency of cultivators from the immortal domain appearing in the abandoned immortal forest was increasing. In addition, after the incident back then, the number of cultivators from the immortal domain would definitely increase greatly. If they were not careful and were discovered, they would be in trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally realized the hidden danger as well, so she was very careful when she walked to avoid being noticed by other cultivators. However, when the two of them arrived at the place where Zhongli Mu used to cultivate, they found that he was nowhere to be seen. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. With Zhongli Mu's temperament, it's impossible for him to give up on cultivation. Could something have happened while we were gone? Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate face was filled with worry. She couldn't help but clench her fists. Her emotions were complicated and nervous. Don't think too much about it. Maybe that's not the case. You also know that Zhongli Mu has many different methods of cultivation. After he finishes his training in one place, he will go to another place. Let's look around here. Maybe it's not far away. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and forced herself to calm down. She couldn't imagine what they would do if something happened to Zhongli Mu because of them. After searching the vicinity for half a day, the two of them did not see Zhongli Mu's figure. Their hearts gradually sank. Let's just go to Granny Hua's place to take a look. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little anxious that they couldn't find Zhongli Mu. They might as well go to Granny Hua's place. That way they would know the result. Chapter 6350. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching made their decision, they quickly rushed towards Granny Hua and the others. However, on the way they unexpectedly saw a figure. Little Blossom? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the imperial wind horse elephant in front of them in shock. Xiao Xuanzi used to follow Little Blossom every day, so they were very familiar with Little Blossom. Little Blossom's eyes instantly showed a hint of joy, but it disappeared in a blink of an eye and returned to normal. Little Blossom, do you know where Zhongli Mu is? Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching didn't notice the change in Little Blossom's eyes. They only wanted to know how Zhongli Mu and the others were doing. Little Blossom was a little surprised and said, Zhongli Mu is cultivating in the back. If you go now, he should still be there. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching both breathed a sigh of relief, feeling a lot more at ease. How have they been recently? Did anything happen? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Little Blossom shook her head. Nothing happened. Everyone is fine. It's just that there were a lot of outsiders who came to the abandoned immortal forest a while ago, causing this place to be in a mess. Recently it's been a lot better, but sometimes we would still see some strange strangers. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching looked at each other and understood. These strange people were obviously the people from the spirit-devouring mine. Luckily, the situation wasn't as bad as they were worried. As long as everyone was safe, they could be completely at ease. Little Blossom, thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Actually, with Little Blossom's strength, she could already transform into a human. However, in the abandoned immortal forest, Little Blossom clearly preferred this form. Living in the form of a demon was actually safer than transforming into a human. You're welcome. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching quickly moved to the back. They now understood that the reason why they couldn't find Zhongli Mu before was because he had changed to the opposite direction of cultivation, so they couldn't find any trace of him for a long time. Little Blossom looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's figures leaving, and then looked around. After confirming that it was really only the two of them, Little Blossom slowly turned around and left. Who? When Zhongli Mu felt an aura approaching, he immediately shouted coldly. His young face was filled with sternness. During this period of time, there were always many cultivators appearing here. The frequency was many times higher than before. It was precisely because of these annoying fellows that he could only choose a place that was closer to home for his training. This way, if there was any danger, Grandpa and the others could quickly come. If Brother and the rest, they wouldn't have left. If it wasn't because of these annoying people, they wouldn't have left. Thinking back to the time when they were training together, he hated these damned bastards even more. We haven't seen each other for a while, but your temper has grown. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and walked in front of Zhongli Mu. The aura that this guy had just released was also not weak. Zhongli Mu didn't expect them to come. A surprised smile quickly appeared on his face. Brother D, why are you here? Zhongli Mu quickly jumped in front of the two, his eyes filled with joy. Chapter 6351. Zhongli Mu's face was filled with distress. Ever since the spirit-devouring mine incident, there have been some annoying people coming to find you guys. In the beginning, there were people who asked about me, but because of Grandpa and the rest, they didn't ask much. After that, almost every day, there would be people wandering around like flies. It was really troublesome. I thought it was those annoying people again, so when I spoke, Zhong Limu scratched his head, a little embarrassed. It's really annoying to see these guys appear all day long. However, we haven't seen many people along the way today. There should be fewer people now, right? Bailey Hongzhuang understood. Zhong Limu was already used to the peaceful life in the abandoned immortal forest. Now that he kept encountering such situations, it was natural for him to be angry. It's true that there have been fewer of them recently. These guys probably already know that there's no hope, so they've gradually stopped loitering around here. Zhong Limu smiled. Can you guys come back now? We are also thinking about this problem, so we wanted to ask you, what do Granny Hua and the rest think? Bewitching said slowly. Zhong Limu shook his head, his expression calm. Now that the storm is almost over, you guys can come back. Granny Hua and the rest didn't take this matter to heart. A few days ago, I heard them talking about how they missed Sister Hongzhuang's cooking. I don't know when you guys will come back. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up. Just by hearing Zhong Limu's words, she could imagine the scene of the seniors talking about it. Is what you said true? You know my character, I won't lie. Zhong Limu said seriously. My grandpa said that those people won't dare to touch you in the abandoned immortal forest, so you can rest assured. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching looked at each other, and their hearts were at ease. Come back soon, it's too boring for me to cultivate alone. Zhong Limu's face was bitter, thinking back to when everyone was together, even if it was just mining in the spirit-devouring mine. He still felt that it was interesting. Looking at Zhong Limu's childish appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang smiles faintly. Let's go see Master first. If there's really no problem, we'll come back. That's great. Zhong Limu said excitedly. Don't worry, Grandma Hua will definitely agree. Bailey Hongzhuang followed Zhong Limu to Granny Hua's residence. Granny Hua was sunbathing in the courtyard as usual and drying the herbs. Hearing the footsteps outside, Granny Hua raised her head. Grandma Hua, look who's here. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Sanjiu, Granny Hua revealed a warm smile on her face. You two brats are finally back. Master. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Disciple has caused trouble for Master. The smile in Granny Hua's eyes deepened. She waved her hand and said, It's just a small matter, don't take it to heart. However, you brats leave for 1.5 years every time. That's quite a long time. Feeling Granny Hua's kindness, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, We were worried that we would cause trouble when we came back, so we went out to train. Chapter 63-52. Yu Hong and the others rushed over when they heard that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had returned. Seeing that the two of them had grown a lot in the past year, a gratified smile appeared on their weathered faces. You little fellows have been living a fulfilling life in the upper realm. I haven't seen you for a while, and you've run off to train again? Yu Hong looked at the two of them with a smile. There was a trace of doubt between his brows. I see that your cultivation hasn't improved much, but it seems like there's a change in your state of mind. As experts of the immortal region, Yu Hong and the others were very sensitive to such things. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's spirits were clearly different from before. Such changes were often caused by changes in their state of mind. Bewitching smiled faintly and nodded. Senior's eyes are really sharp. Just based on how diligent you two are, you'll be able to make a name for yourself in the immortal region in the future. Yu Hong's face was full of praise. Having lived to this age, he had seen too many cultivators. Many cultivators began to enjoy a peaceful life after achieving some results. As time passed, the superiority they had at the beginning no longer existed. Similarly, there were also some cultivators who never stopped working hard. This would only make them better and better. Clearly, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching belonged to the latter. Zhongli Sharan slowly said, The place you went to train this time is not simple. You can see it too. Hua Shukong smiled faintly. He was very clear about the strength of these two little fellows. They were both heavenly geniuses, but there was still a gap in their state of mind. This wasn't to say that the two of them didn't have enough comprehension. There was a certain relationship between their state of mind and age. If they hadn't reached that age, it would be difficult to see through many things. However, the two's state of mind had improved by quite a bit. They must have encountered an incredible place to train. Otherwise, it would be impossible for such a big change to occur in such a short period of time. Seeing that the seniors could see through all of this so easily, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed inwardly. The seniors' insight was indeed not something they could compare to. Just as the two of them were about to explain the situation, Yu Hong suddenly said, "Did you come back to see how we old folks are doing? Or do you plan to continue your studies?" Without waiting for the two to answer, Yu Hong continued, "I haven't really learned what I learned back then. It's already been more than a year. If I don't continue learning, I'm afraid I'll forget everything I learned before." Bailey Hongzhuang laughed inwardly. Senior Yu Hong was as cute as ever. Although he was asking them, his attitude was very obvious. He hoped that they could come back. This feeling made them feel very warm. The seniors were like the elders of the family, always taking care of them with tolerance. In fact, they didn't do anything. They just cooked every day. This kind of small matter was not a problem at all. However, the seniors were not stingy with their guidance. "Senior, we were planning to come back anyway, but we were worried about the situation here," Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. "We don't need to care about those small fries," Hua Shukong said arrogantly. Granny Hua also said, "Those guys don't have that much patience. They haven't found any trace of you after such a long time. They've already given up." Chapter 6353. Nowadays, the cultivators who occasionally appear here are usually some idle cultivators from the immortal region who want to come here to try their luck. As long as you pay attention, this won't be a problem. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and made their decision. "We'll go back and tell everyone, then we'll come together." But Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen. This time, they had something to tell the seniors. Di Beichen naturally understood what she meant, and immediately said, "Senior, after my big brother found out that we came to the abandoned immortal forest, he also wants to come and take a look. Is that okay?" When he said this, Di Beichen was also in a difficult position. Back then, the seniors had clearly told him not to casually bring others here. However, Xiaofeng was his big brother, and he was also very curious about this place, so he didn't want to disappoint him. Granny Hua and the others frowned, clearly not expecting this kind of problem. "He's your biological big brother?" Yu Hong asked. Di Beichen nodded. "Yes. That means this kid should be very handsome. Your whole family is very good-looking." Yu Hong smiled faintly. "In that case, my disciple's looks are slightly inferior." If when Xiren was here and heard his master say this, his face would definitely have darkened. However, Zhongli Xiaoran didn't seem to be joking at all. He said in a low voice, "Back then, we should have already explained things very clearly. Although we don't know how you came here, a secret is a secret, because very few people know about it. If more and more people know about it, then it won't be a secret anymore. Any existence that disrupts the balance of the world will have certain hidden dangers. If this continues, things will only get more and more troublesome." Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen weren't surprised by Zhongli Xiaoran's reprimand. Although this was a reprimand, they knew that Zhongli Xiaoran was doing this for their own good. "Zhongli Xiaoran, we understand what you're saying, but..." Di Beichen frowned slightly. They were indeed in the wrong. Under such circumstances, it seemed that anything they said would be wrong and meaningless. However, when he thought of his elder brother's hopeful look, he could not break his hopes. If it really didn't work, he could only ask his big brother to wait for a while longer. At this moment, Granny Hua said, "Since he's your biological brother, he should be trustworthy, right?" "Granny, don't worry. You can definitely trust my brother." Granny Hua sighed. "This is the last time." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. "Thank you, Grandma." It was only after Bailey Hongzhuang and Gu Ruyan had left that Zhongli Xiaoran looked at the flower with a serious expression. "Didn't I say last time that this will not happen again? You really don't have any principles." "I know what you're worried about, but these little fellows have their own good luck, so there shouldn't be any problems. They should know their limits and won't do such a thing in the future," the flower said slowly. "Alas!" Zhongli Xiaoran shook his head. "Forget it. These little fellows won't stay here for too long. They'll go to the chaotic immortal region in the future. The seniors' expressions became complicated. Needless to say, the appearance of these little fellows really brought them a lot of joy. Chapter 63-54. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen told everyone the news, everyone couldn't help but be overjoyed. We can finally go back. Shangguan Ying's face was full of joy. I happened to encounter some problems while studying runes recently. I didn't know when I would be able to go back and ask Master. But I didn't expect to be able to go back so soon. Is Master and the others all right? Xiren asked with concern. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Don't worry, what happened back then didn't affect them much. That's good. After everyone made the decision, they made a special trip to Emperor Cloud City. After not going back for so long, they naturally had to buy more things to show filial piety to their master. At the same time, Di Beichen went to Di Xiaofeng's residence. Di Xiaofeng hadn't come out since he made up his mind to go into seclusion. It could be seen that this time he really made up his mind. After hearing someone knock on the door, Di Xiaofeng felt a little strange. After opening the door and seeing a familiar figure, he smiled. Beichen, why are you looking for me today? Big brother, I have good news for you. Di Beichen smiled faintly. What good news? Di Xiaofeng was a little puzzled. He had been in the family all this time, so there shouldn't be any problems. We are preparing to go to the abandoned immortal forest. Do you want to go with us? As Di Beichen's voice fell, Di Xiaofeng's face flashed with a moment of sluggishness, followed by ecstasy. Is what you said true? We can go to the abandoned immortal forest soon? Ever since he learned about the abandoned immortal forest from Di Beichen, he had been looking forward to going there as soon as possible. That was a stronger world. He didn't know how different it was from the upper realm. He was really curious. Di Beichen nodded slightly. That's right. Hongzhuang and the others have already gone to Emperor Cloud City to buy things. When they come back, we will prepare to go. Take advantage of this time to prepare, and bring some things you need. We will be leaving soon. No problem, Di Xiaofeng agreed. He turned around and was about to pack up, but the moment he turned around, he stopped and said happily, Beichen, thank you very much. Even if he went to the abandoned immortal forest, it didn't mean that he could become a person of the immortal realm. But because it was his dream since he was young, this mattered for him. Di Beichen chuckled. Although he felt very embarrassed when he mentioned this matter to the seniors, at this moment, seeing his big brother's happy appearance, he felt that everything was worth it. In fact, he was to have such a big brother. He's as and hopes as hope. He's TS and hope. SSS and SSS and S and by beasts and S ants. TT, teat, est, S2, T2 teat, T. Chapter 63-55. With their current strength, they couldn't do anything for the seniors, so they could only do their best to make the seniors happy. If these delicious snacks could make the seniors happy, they would naturally prepare more. Yingying and I have tasted all the delicious things in Emperor Cloud City, so we know what's good. It's easy to buy them now. When Xiren chuckled, the two of them often took Xiaohei and Xiaobai for a stroll in Emperor Cloud City. On one hand, they were greedy, and on the other hand, they wanted to buy some delicious snacks to bring back to the abandoned immortal forest. Bailey Hongzhuang went to buy some daily necessities after seeing Xiren, and the others buy snacks with ease. The seniors were fine, but Zhongli Mu cultivated all day long, so his clothes were worn out very quickly. Moreover, her master said that some things in the house were broken. She always remembered it in her heart. This time, she went back and replaced all the things in the house with new ones. After everything was prepared, everyone returned to the Di family with smiles on their faces. They couldn't help but be happy at the thought of going back. Bailey Hongzhuang left all the medicine she had with the family, and informed her parents that she would be in seclusion for a while before returning. Lan Yunxiao and the others weren't surprised when they heard Bailey Hongzhuang's decision. Although these kids weren't in seclusion before, they were still very busy. This seclusion would probably take a few months, so they decided to go to the Mercenary Association to gain experience. They hadn't been there for a while, so it was time for them to gain some experience. The D family's elder in charge of managing the cultivation resources was full of smiles every time he saw Bailey Hongzhuang. His young madam was really a treasure. Every time the young madam came, she would take out some very precious medicine. Every time he brought out the medicine in the resource room, all the young cultivators seemed to be injected with chicken blood. Speaking of which, it was interesting. Originally, obtaining the medicine would increase the strength of the young cultivators, which was the reward. But now, the young cultivators cared more about who could obtain the medicine through their own efforts. No matter who obtained the potion, it would be an incomparably glorious matter. When they first discovered this, they were a little surprised. However, after discovering that this was a healthy competition, they no longer cared about it. Normally, it would take a lot of effort to get these young fellows to work harder. Now that these young fellows were working so hard themselves, they naturally couldn't be happier. In just a short period of time, everyone discovered that the overall strength of the younger generation of cultivators had improved a lot compared to before. Almost every little one had set the young master and young madam as their goals. The boys hoped that they could become a majestic hero like the young master, while the girls hoped to become an existence like the young madam. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others packed up everything, they went to the abandoned immortal forest together. Di Xiaofeng only knew that it was all thanks to Bailey Hongzhuang, but he didn't know how to get to the abandoned immortal forest. After he and Bailey Yunyan entered the Chaos Ring, the two of them were completely dumbfounded. Chapter 6356. Hongzhuang, your ring is too shocking. Bailey Yunyan's face was filled with disbelief. An ordinary ring actually had such a magnificent palace inside. Even though she had seen many small worlds, the small world in front of her still shocked her. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. The Chaos Ring had always been mysterious. She used to think that the most important thing was to study here. Now this passage had become the most precious thing. After a short moment of shock, Di Xiaofeng also understood what this meant. His expression immediately became serious. Yunyan, you can't tell anyone about this. With their strength and status in the upper realm, there were very few people who dared to scheme against them. However, if everyone knew that there was an entrance to the immortal region, then everyone would go crazy and fight over it. Once that happened, things would become troublesome. Bailey Yunyan slightly nodded. She also understood. Xiaofeng, don't worry. I definitely won't say anything. Bailey Yunyan's expression was serious. Hongzhuang was the person she wanted to thank the most. No matter what, she wouldn't do anything to harm Hongzhuang. Seeing how serious the two of them were, Bailey Hongzhuang also smiled. Since you've decided to go together, I trust you. There was no need to say more about the trust between them. No matter if it was Xiaofeng or Yunyan, they definitely wouldn't do anything to harm everyone. When everyone arrived at the abandoned immortal forest, they saw the forest full of vitality. Everyone closed their eyes. A cool breeze blew past. The tip of their nose was filled with the fresh fragrance of grass. We're finally back. Xiao Xuanzi's face was filled with joy. He couldn't help but look around. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Xiao Xuanzi's expression. A faint smile appeared in her eyes. Out of all of them, the one who wanted to come back the most was Xiao Xuanzi. Unknowingly, he had been separated from Xiao Hua for a year. Previously, when she mentioned seeing Xiao Hua, she clearly felt Xiao Xuanzi's expression change. However, she forced herself not to say anything. Now that they were back, Xiao Xuanzi should be looking for Xiao Hua again. Little Xuanzi, little Blossom should be around here. You can take action again. When Xiren looked at Xiao Xuanzi with a smile on his face. You've been chasing after her for quite a while now. Try to succeed as soon as possible. Hearing this, Xiao Xuanzi smiled faintly. I'll fight for it. You better hope that there are no other imperial wind horse elephants around Little Blossom during this time. Bailey Yinche chuckled softly. Even though this fellow had not been here for a long time, he would often talk about Little Blossom. It was fine that she was complaining about Little Flower, but now she was complaining about him. That was intolerable. Shut your crow's beak. This is absolutely impossible. Xiao Xuanzi's expression was solemn as he continued. Although Little Blossom hasn't promised me yet, I know she has me in her heart, so the things you're thinking about won't happen. Bai Lianche chuckled. He was just saying it casually. In his heart, he still hoped that Xiao Xuanzi could succeed as soon as possible. Chapter 6357. After listening to Bewitching's warning, Xiao Xuanzi also knew the importance of this matter. He immediately nodded and said, Master, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Bewitching nodded slightly. Although Xiao Xuanzi's personality was more jumpy, he still knew the importance of this matter. Look at you. Why don't you go and find Little Blossom first? Bewitching said. Anyway, Master and the others know about your situation and are used to it. They still remembered Granny Hua's strange expression when she found out that Xiao Xuanzi was pursuing Little Blossom. This kind of fate was really unimaginable. However, Granny Hua also encouraged Xiao Xuanzi after being shocked for a short while, telling him to do his best. It was because of Granny Hua's encouragement that Xiao Xuanzi was as if he was injected with chicken blood. He was even more determined to succeed as soon as possible and not let Granny Hua down. Xiao Xuanzi scratched his head, and his face showed that he was thinking. Then I'll leave first. After I get Little Blossom, I'll bring her to see Granny Hua. Otherwise, it'll be really embarrassing. When these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but chuckle. They didn't expect Xiao Xuanzi to care about his face. After Xiao Xuanzi left, Xiren said, Xiao Xuanzi has been pursuing Little Blossom for a long time, right? After so long, he still hasn't gotten her. Could it be that he has no chance? Everyone fell into silence. Although they always joked about this matter, they still hoped that Xiao Xuanzi could succeed as soon as possible. Just based on Xiao Xuanzi's flirtatious and infatuated personality, if he failed, he would definitely be very sad. Then we'll have to see if Little Blossom has a beast in her heart. If she doesn't, Xiao Xuanzi's chances should still be very high. Bai Lianche thought and said. He felt that Xiao Xuanzi was still very charming. The most important thing is that Xiao Xuanzi has lost a lot of weight. He can be considered to be elegant. Do you know the standard of what the imperial wind horse elephant likes? Ling raised her eyebrows and asked. Bai Lianche shook his head slightly. I don't know about that. Low-level beasts all liked beasts of the same race. High-level beasts didn't need to care about this after transforming into human form. However, every beast had their own thoughts. What kind of appearance they liked, only they knew in their hearts. Nobody expected that Xiao Xuanzi would like that. And even felt that Xiao Xuanzi's taste was beyond their expectations. However, when they thought about it, it wasn't a big deal. None of them had seen Little Flower transform into a human before. That's right. That's right. She's so. It's she, if. It she is. It. She is. To it. In is she. She is. However, it was quickly found by Xiao Xuanzi every time. Don't you see anything in this? Hearing Linger's words, everyone couldn't help but be stunned and look at each other. Things that they couldn't figure out seemed to have been directly pointed out by Ling, in a few words. At this moment, everyone realized that Ling who rarely spoke, was the real intelligent beast. Does this count as seeing through Little Blossom's thoughts? Chapter 6358. The truth was out. Following Linger's question, everyone felt that it was the truth. Looks like we don't have to worry about Xiao Xuanzi anymore. Bewitching chuckled. Thinking about it carefully, Xiao Xuanzi's love life was pretty smooth. If they hadn't left the upper realm due to various reasons, they might have been together by now. This is great for Xiao Xuanzi. We won't leave the abandoned immortal forest for the time being, so he has enough time. He should be able to succeed this time. When Xiren looked ahead with a smile, it seemed that their team was getting stronger and stronger. After everyone arrived at Granny Hua's residence, the four seniors appeared in front of everyone. Master, when Xiren looked at Yu Hong with a face full of joy, I brought a lot of your favorite snacks to show my filial piety to you this time. Yu Hong's eyes instantly lit up, and a thick smile appeared on his face. You have a conscience, kid. Bailey Hongzhuang, and the others also surrounded them with smiles. Master, we've gathered all the good food that we could find this time. Take a look and see if there's anything you like. We'll bring more in the future. Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. After filling the entire courtyard with food, their expressions were a little dazed. Along the way in their minds, these seniors were all rare experts. They had been thinking about how to gain the seniors' approval, but they didn't expect to see such a situation after arriving. This situation was completely different from what they had imagined. Granny Hua and the others naturally knew that these little fellows were thinking of ways to curry favor with them. Of course, this also included their filial piety. In the past, every time they came, these little fellows would thoughtfully prepare the food that they liked. This time, they hadn't been back for so long, so this situation was within their expectations. However, since they had already agreed, they naturally wouldn't say anything more. Not bad, these things taste good. Yu Hong's face revealed a satisfied smile. You have some understanding of master's taste. When Xiren smiled, although he did not know how to cook, he had noticed his master's favorite dishes. Granny Hua and Hua Shukong were naturally full of smiles. Zhongli Xiaoran had always been serious. Although he was eating, his expression was still somewhat serious. Zhongli Mu noticed his grandfather's expression and felt a little helpless. He knew his grandfather's personality very well. He never liked unexpected situations. However, he also understood that his grandfather had already accepted it. He just didn't want to admit it. Grandpa, look, these are the new clothes that big sister Hong Zhuang bought for you. The size is just right for you. Take a look and see if you like them. Zhongli Mu took the clothes and walked over to Zhongli Xiaoran with a smile. Zhongli Xiaoran raised his eyes to look at the clothes. Before he could say anything, Hua Shukong had already walked over. These clothes are not bad. Didn't you always say that your clothes were worn out? Isn't it good to have new ones now? Bailey Hongzhuang took out another recliner and said, Master, don't you usually like to bask in the sun here? So I bought you a recliner. What do you think? Chapter 63-59. Granny Hua often tidied up the herbs in the courtyard. Every time she was done, she would lie down in the courtyard for a while. However, her own reclining chair had been creaking for a long time. Just as she was thinking about how to get a new one, Hong Zhuang brought one over. How could she not be surprised? Yu Hong's eyes lit up when he saw the reclining chair. This reclining chair is much better than the one Granny Hua had. I like it too. In reality, it wasn't just Granny Hua. The seniors all liked to sunbathe in the courtyard. When Xiren was dumbfounded, this time, he had only thought that his master was a foodie, so he had not noticed this point. Looking at Xiren's expression, how could Yu Hong not know what he was thinking? Look, you still have a lot to learn. Xiren hurriedly nodded. Master, I'll definitely bring everything you need next time. Looking at this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. The reason why she bought these things was that she suddenly remembered that the several seniors were very strong, but the place where they lived was very simple. Many things could even be called simple, because there were so many of them living together. The seniors had even specially built a house for them. It was naturally very simple to make with the materials in the abandoned immortal forest. However, the materials used were not ordinary. It was warm in the winter and cool in the summer. It was very comfortable. In the past, when she mentioned this to Granny Hua only said that the materials in the immortal domain were more plentiful. In the abandoned immortal forest, everything was simpler. This time, she remembered this point and appreciated it. Fortunately, the seniors all seemed to like it. Senior Yu, I prepared 4 reclining chairs this time. With that, 3 more reclining chairs appeared in front of everyone. Seeing this, Yu Hong and Hua Shukong revealed a wide smile. Hong Zhuang is indeed smart. She remembers everything. Haha. Grandpa, you look at the reclining chair? Zhongli Mu looked at Zhongli Xiaoran. Zhongli Xiaoran looked at the reclining chair, then looked at the smiling Bailey Hongzhuang before nodding. It's indeed not bad. Seeing that Zhongli Xiaoran was no longer as serious as before, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also quietly heaved a sigh of relief. Senior Zhongli might not have taught them much, but he was actually the strongest of the 4 seniors. Even if it was just some simple pointers, they would still benefit greatly from it. Thus, no one wanted to make Senior Zhongli unhappy. Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Union glanced at each other. They didn't know that Zhongli Xiaoran's expression was like this because of their appearance. They only thought that Zhongli Xiaoran was an extraordinary character. "This is your big brother?" Zhongli Xiaoran turned his gaze to Di Xiaofeng. His gaze was as calm as an ancient well, but it seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. Di Beichen nodded slightly. "This is my big brother, Di Xiaofeng." "Greetings, senior." Di Xiaofeng took a few steps forward and bowed respectfully. Granny Hua and the others had already noticed Di Xiaofeng. Now that they took a closer look, they realized that he was indeed a bit similar to Di Beichen. They were both elegant and handsome men. Zhongli Xiaoran nodded slightly. "Since you're here, then cultivate well." Leaving behind these words, Zhongli Xiaoran slowly walked away. Chapter 6360. That old man's personality is like that. I'm afraid he won't change in this lifetime. Yu Hong shook his head. It's fine if he had such a bad temper in the immortal domain. I didn't expect him to still be like that in the abandoned immortal forest. Hua Shukong chuckled. Old man Zhongli's arrogance comes from his bones. How can it be changed so easily? Granny Hua looked at Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan with a satisfied smile. 2 good children. Cultivate well in the future. Thank you, senior. Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan bowed with a smile. Other than Zhongli Xiaoran, the other 3 seniors were easy to get along with. This made them feel more at ease. The following days returned to how it was a year ago. The only difference was that everyone's cultivation method had changed. Due to the fact that there would be cultivators from the immortal domain nearby, everyone could only stay close to their residences. This way, if there were any problems, the seniors would be the first to know. Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan were extremely surprised by the magic of the abandoned immortal forest. There was no spirit gathering formation here, but the spirit energy density was not weak at all. The most important thing was that the method of cultivation was different from what they usually did. Originally, Di Xiaofeng still didn't understand. It wasn't until Di Beichen showed him the power of the move that he realized that this seemingly simple move had such great power. No wonder your strength can't be measured by common sense. So your cultivation methods are so different. Di Beichen smiled faintly. We started late. The strongest among us is Zhongli Mu. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. He didn't doubt this at all. Previously, when he saw Zhongli Mu cultivate, he realized that this kid, who seemed to be in his 20s, was extraordinarily strong. If he went to the upper realm, all the geniuses would not be called geniuses. However, when he thought about how this was the immortal domain, his heart calmed down. After all, cultivators from different realms couldn't be compared. There were as many experts here as there were clouds. The cultivation resources were also much better. It would be strange if the cultivators here were similar to the upper realm. According to what you said, one can only ascend to the crossing immortal domain after breaking through to the radiant sun realm. Di Xiaofeng frowned. With our current strength, there's still some distance before we can break through to the radiant sun realm. Di Beichen's expression also turned serious. Right now, the most important thing for us is to raise our cultivation. Every cultivator from the immortal domain is stronger than us. If we don't have the strength, we can only rely on the protection of the 4 seniors. We can't go anywhere. I understand. Di Xiaofeng's expression was heavy. He wanted to take a good look at the true appearance of the immortal realms. However, if he wanted to do so, he had to have the corresponding strength. Ever since he was despised by the 9-tailed inferno fox, Di Xiaofeng made up his mind to cultivate hard. He must raise his cultivation, and not let the 9-tailed inferno fox look down on him. When Bailey Yunyan saw that everyone was working so hard, she also became even more hardworking. She knew all too well that everyone present had a higher cultivation talent than her. Furthermore, she was the weakest among them. Chapter 6361. They cultivated day after day. It seemed like every day was the same, but in the process, everyone's strength was constantly increasing. Zhong Limu was in a good mood every day. As long as there were people cultivating with him, he felt that he was not the only one working hard. Most importantly, everyone was trying their best to catch up with each other. Even the boring training of cultivators had become very interesting. As usual, Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated during the day and learned medical skills from Granny Hua at night. Hongzhuang, wake up early tomorrow morning and come with me to pick herbs. Granny Hua looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. The place we're going to this time is a little far, but there are many herbs that you haven't seen before. You've read a lot of medical books recently. Go pick some herbs and have a look. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She knew that Granny Hua wanted to test her. Okay. Fortunately, she had already reviewed the knowledge in the medical books when she was in the family. She remembered these things by heart. However, she also understood that it was one thing to read the descriptions of herbs in the books, and another thing to actually see the herbs. Therefore, it was obviously not enough for any doctor to just read the medical books. They also needed to understand the environment of the herbs. Granny, when I was in the upper realm, my disguise was still useful. However, facing the powerhouses of the immortal region, these disguises are useless. I wonder if you have any ideas? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. She had already realized this when she was taken to the spirit-devouring mine. In front of the powerhouses of the immortal region, the disguises were useless. On the contrary, the superfluous methods would be even more suspicious. However, they had caused such a big commotion in the spirit-devouring mine. Presumably, many people had already seen their portraits. Once they went to the chaotic immortal region, it was hard to guarantee that they would not be recognized. How precious was the spirit-devouring mine? If they were recognized, everyone would treat them as targets. The situation would definitely become very difficult. If you want to disguise yourself, it's best to have a high-grade mask. These masks can make people unable to recognize your true appearance. However, amongst the numerous immortal artifacts, this mask was the rarest and most valuable. It would be fine if there was only one person, but there are so many of you. It's impossible to gather so many masks. Granny Hua's eyes were filled with wisdom. Even if she only noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, she had already guessed her thoughts. Apart from that, there is another method. This method requires the use of a special kind of medicinal herb. It just so happens that the place I'm taking you to tomorrow has this kind of medicinal herb. I'll let you see it then. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up when she heard this. She said excitedly, "Thank you, Grandma." Bailey Hongzhuang had already gotten up when the night gradually faded, and the sky had not yet turned white. As soon as she went out, she found that Granny Hua was already waiting for her in the courtyard. She immediately carried the bamboo basket and followed Granny Hua outside. She was already very familiar with this kind of situation. It was just that she woke up especially early this time. When Granny Hua first brought her to pick medicinal herbs, they were all in the vicinity. As time passed, the places they went became more and more distant. Chapter 63-62. Bailey Hongzhuang followed behind Granny Hua all the way to the front. Don't look at Granny Hua's age. Her body was stronger than many young people. Faintly, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that with Granny Hua's strength, this should not be Granny Hua's appearance. This was because a cultivator's lifespan would increase with their strength. She was not sure how strong Granny Hua was, but to be able to block the people from the spirit-devouring mine, just this point alone was enough to prove her strength. Perhaps there was some hidden reason. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a while, and decided to let go of this idea. In reality, regardless of whether it was Granny Hua or the other three seniors, with their strength, they would definitely have a place in the salted fish. They were willing to give up everything to settle down in the abandoned immortal forest and live such a poor life. This was already very strange. As the two walked further and further, the originally dark sky unknowingly became brighter. The fragrance of the grass lingered around the tip of their noses. The grass by the side of the road still had dew droplets hanging on it. They could faintly hear the sound of birds not far away. This scene was like going out for a walk. Whether it was Granny Hua or Bailey Hongzhuang, they were both in a good mood. However, Granny Hua obviously hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would spend more time on learning, so she would occasionally ask some questions to test her. Bailey Hongzhuang answered every question seriously. She had already memorized the contents of a few medical books. During this period of time, Granny Hua taught her the effects of these herbs after fusing them with the upper realms herbs. Because these were herbs that she had never come into contact with before, the medicinal effects would be different. If she did not understand this point, she would not be able to do any deeper research in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang had always been serious and strict with her medical skills, because if there was a slight mistake, it might not be of use at a crucial moment. She was not willing to let such a thing happen, so she could only learn everything thoroughly. Granny Hua saw all of this and became more and more satisfied. None of the cultivators who could reach the immortal domain were simple. Everyone had enough opportunities and worked hard to reach this place. However, there were still some differences between geniuses. Bailey Hongzhuang's characteristics were exactly what she admired. It's the one in front. Granny Hua pointed at the hillside in front of them. From afar, it looked no different from the weeds on the roadside. However, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that these were all very precious medicinal herbs. The potions made from these herbs were often very effective. She had already picked a lot of them along the way. It was obviously not enough for her to raise the cultivators of the Bailey family, the D family, and the Lin family by herself. What's more, she still had clans and sects in the lower realm. Therefore, she had already given the recipe to the doctors of the Bailey family and the D family. When the time came, she only needed to bring the herbs back, and everyone would be able to concoct the medicine. That would be much more convenient. Slowly approaching the hillside, Granny Hua casually found a place to sit down. Come and identify these medicinal herbs. Yes. Bailey Hongzhuang took 2 steps forward and slowly squatted down, looking at the green plants. Chapter 63-63. This is Lingji grass. It can help a cultivator's wounds heal. Regardless of whether it's internal or external injuries, it has a very good effect. Bailey Hongzhuang dug out a stalk of medicinal herb. Her bright white face rippled with a faint smile. Lingji grass is very delicate, so when you dig out the herb, you must take out the entire stalk. Once there's a fracture, unless you consume it immediately, the medicinal effect will be greatly reduced. After dealing with the soil on the stalk, Bailey Hongzhuang placed the Lingji grass into the bamboo basket. Looking around, there were quite a lot of Lingji grass around. Although Lingji grass was not a very rare medicinal herb, its usage rate was very high. That was why it was given such a name. Granny Hua nodded slightly. Look over there. What's that? Bailey Hongzhuang turned her eyes to the side. A green plant with a hint of purple appeared in her line of sight. This is purple grass. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment, but after carefully sizing it up, she said, No, this is young purple grass. Purple grass and young purple grass look very similar in appearance. However, there are some differences on the back of the stalk and leaves. This is young purple grass. Unlike the uncertainty from before, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice had become certain. Granny Hua's eyes were filled with a satisfied smile. She felt that teaching this disciple was much easier than teaching others in the past. This point was clear. Moreover, the more she looked, the more satisfied she was with her ability to analyze. After testing Bailey Hongzhuang on several medicinal herbs, Granny Hua came to the top of the hill. She pointed at a very inconspicuous medicinal herb and said, The question you asked me last night, the solution is this. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. The medicinal herb in front of her was too small compared to the other medicinal herbs. It was completely inconspicuous. If Granny Hua did not specifically mention this herb, she was afraid that she would not have noticed it at all. However, when she shifted her gaze to the herb, she vaguely felt a moment of absent-mindedness. When she looked again to confirm whether she had seen wrongly, she discovered that the situation did not occur again. She could only assume that she had seen wrongly. As Bailey Hongzhuang approached, Granny Hua had been paying attention to her changes. However, when she realized that Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm and did not change at all. A trace of surprise appeared in her eyes. Grandma, what kind of medicinal herb is this? I haven't seen any related records in medical books. Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Granny Hua carefully looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, You didn't have any hallucinations when you saw the illusory grass? Illusory grass? Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Illusory grass, as its name implies, causes people who see it to hallucinate. Don't underestimate it just because it's a small stalk of grass. Even those fellows from the immortal region would fall into confusion when they see it. It has a special kind of magic. Although it's not fatal, it often causes people to dream. Granny Hua smiled faintly. With your cultivation, if you saw this illusory grass, I'm afraid that you would fall asleep here. I didn't expect that you were not affected at all. It's really strange. Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood that the seemingly ordinary and mediocre grass in front of her actually had such a big effect. She was shocked in her heart. However, she understood her own situation very well. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.